Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. The Prime Minister in Williams Lake, what it means for the investigation into potential graves found by local First Nations.
They're treating my bike as if it's an uninsured vehicle.
Questions around why a Vancouver cyclist hit by a car has now been handed a hefty bill from ICBC. And concern about a sixth wave, why experts say it's not time to hit the panic button just yet.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. We begin tonight with a visit to BC's Caribou region by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He's promising more funding for the Williams Lake First Nation, still reeling from the discovery of 93 possible graves where a residential school once stood. Renee Filipponi looks at how the money will be spent and why people there say it's so urgently needed.
Welcomed by the sound of children drumming, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited the Williams Lake First Nation. He said he was there to learn.
Thank you for your strength in sharing your story.
And spent the morning hearing firsthand stories from survivors of the St. Joseph's Mission residential school.
The courage and the strength of those elders touches us all deeply.
Thousands of Indigenous students were sent to the school, which was open from the late 1800s until 1981. In January, the First Nation revealed the discovery of 93 reflections, potential human burial sites, using ground-penetrating radar. Now the federal government is announcing nearly $3 million in additional funding to continue the search, which will survey more territory and even begin excavation.
There is still a lot of work to do. We understand that and we acknowledge that, but this is a great first step and I'm very proud.
Survivor Jean Williams helped welcome the Prime Minister.
In the background of this picture here is...
She attended the school for 10 years and says reconciliation can't happen without the full truth.
We really need the truth of how all of these things started. We don't have any, I'm not sure about the records, the record keeping, who was behind all of the burials, what happened.
She also wants to see more money towards healing and mental health support for the generations that have been traumatized.
In order for us to even start our reconciliation, is that we need to have a healing center, a healing place.
In the afternoon, Trudeau visited the site where the school used to stand. A difficult visit for those who attended and a moment to reflect on all that was lost here.
It's taken 150 years to get here. It can't take us another 150 years to resolve this.
Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Williams Lake First Nation.
And coming up in the show, we'll return to the Kamloops First Nation and speak about the path to healing nearly a year after the discovery of 215 potential graves at the Kamloops residential school. Now, stories about the residential schools can be unsettling. If you or anyone you know needs support, you can access emotional and crisis referral services by calling the 24-hour crisis line. The number is there on your screen. It's 1-866-925-4419. Now, the province is taking steps to implement the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP, as it's commonly known. The Minister for Indigenous Relations says this is the first government anywhere in the world to take the action.
It articulates a vision that has been co-created of a province where the rights of Indigenous peoples are fully realized, respected, upheld, and implemented. Because we believe that in doing so, in realizing the full potential of Indigenous rights, we realize the full potential of our province.
The plan outlines 89 actions, each linked to what he calls a tangible and measurable goal tied to a specific ministry. An arrest has been made in an alleged homophobic attack that happened Saturday afternoon involving a Vancouver Island University student.
I do 100% feel that it was a hate crime.
It's disgusting, and it's literally left me traumatized in a way like where I could just get beat up for being myself.
19-year-old Spencer Frey says he and a school friend attended an off-campus party where he was repeatedly insulted, groped, and then punched. A 19-year-old Nanaimo man turned himself in yesterday night, and he's been arrested for the assault. Investigators are treating the case as a hate crime and say charges could be laid. Well, Vancouver Cyclist has been sent a hefty bill from ICBC after a crash with a car last summer. The auto insurer is claiming the biker is 50% at fault and must pay for the damages to the car involved. As Janella Hamilton reports, he says trying to fight his case has been an overwhelming and unfair process.
This is definitely insult to injury.
When Ben Bolliger looks at his broken bike, he says the traumatic memories come flooding back.
I may have entered the intersection going maybe 5 kilometers an hour, and I was thrown 14 meters. They removed many pieces of windshield from my back. I think in the end it was like close to 97 sutures and staples.
Then, while healing from his injury, he got a letter from ICBC. It says he is 50% at fault and owes $3,700 for damage done to the car. Bolliger says he has been cycling for more than a decade and was confident in his choice to cross the intersection safely.
And they are treating my bike as if it's an uninsured vehicle. So they are treating me just as they would a car.
Alicia Sharp says she is facing a similar fight with ICBC after being told she is 100% at fault for a collision because she was crossing the intersection from a stop sign.
I was taken away from the scene in an ambulance. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get any information from the scene, so I don't know about the car that hit me, or I wasn't able to get any witness information either. As I mentioned, it's a busy bike route, so I waited until I had the pedestrian walk sign.
According to a statement from ICBC, investigators review all evidence to reach a decision, including reports from the drivers involved, witness statements, and police reports, and says that in claims where there are conflicting accounts and insufficient evidence to determine which version of the incident was more accurate, responsibility for the crash may be split. They also said there is the ability to appeal the decision with a civil resolution. But lawyers say the new system is flawed.
Under the old system, you could retain counsel to create some leverage and discuss the law and the facts of the case in a way that could establish some kind of a proposition in the broader context of the negotiations around the injury case. In the new world, you can't pursue damages.
He says the no-fault policy needs to be changed, and in the meantime suggests cyclists wear a body cam for evidence purposes.
We're calling for many changes to the Motor Vehicle Act. It's very outdated and doesn't do much for people walking or people cycling, but a specific vulnerable road user law would be a big step forward.
Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth said he's asked ICBC to review the matter, but said he couldn't comment on any specific cases. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
The province is reporting a small increase in COVID hospitalizations since yesterday. There are 3 more patients in hospital and 3 fewer in ICU. 6 people have died from the virus since yesterday. The total number of COVID deaths in BC now nearing 3,000. While COVID-19 restrictions continue to ease, concerns are being raised about a 6th wave in parts of the country. As Benit Brach reports, experts in BC say a rise in COVID cases is likely, but it's not time to panic just yet.
Mask mandates might be gone for the most part, and vaccine cards are on their way out the door. But experts say a 6th wave is not out of the picture in BC.
It's a little hard to say, but our best projection that we can make is that whatever wave we're getting over the next few weeks or months isn't going to rise steeply and is likely to not be that big. It could look more like a plateau or maybe a small rise.
He says it's too early to forecast a new wave of COVID in BC, but more cases are likely as restrictions ease.
I don't think it's a time to panic at this point and to see rapid changes in public health policy. There's the relaxation of measures, there's the existing immunity in the population due to vaccines and boosters.
Experts have also mentioned cases rising globally, such as in Shanghai. Out east, experts say a sixth wave is underway for Ontario and Quebec. But in BC, experts say hospitalization rates are not as concerning yet.
The number of people in the hospital is the way that we measure that, is still not growing as fast as in the East Coast.
One of the early signals for rising COVID cases is testing wastewater. But again, that's showing no significant change for BC.
We need to still continue to be careful for the effects of COVID in the population and its transmission. But I don't see any alarm bells, but we have to look at that really week by week to know.
Bach says he expects COVID cases to go up, especially as students return to school without a mask mandate. He says British Columbians can still catch COVID as antibodies from prior vaccines fade, and those most at risk are the unvaccinated, immunocompromised, and the elderly. He recommends people keep using their masks, avoid large crowds, and go to ventilated areas. Beneat Brage, CBC News, Vancouver.
Let's get right into our search for the best small town in BC. Tonight, we take a trip within the Lower Mainland to Bowen Island, not far from downtown Vancouver, but still a world away. The municipality, surrounded by the Salish Sea, has been home to Indigenous hunting grounds, a brickworks plant, a steamship service, and an artist colony, and increasingly commuters traveling to and from the city. Its population grows in the summer, and Bowen Island is still a retreat and source of inspiration for writers and creatives. And that is where we find our municipal affairs reporter, Justin McElroy. Justin, what makes Bowen Island a contender for BC's best small town?
I think anyone who's taken the ferry over from Metro Vancouver to Snug Cove right behind me to do a little day trip knows it's a fantastic place to spend a day, to go to the shops, to do a hike, to stay overnight. But there's plenty of people from Metro Vancouver who have made the permanent move in recent years. Brittany Yu is one of them. She moved 7 years ago, operates the taco and ice cream shop right on the pier. And like a lot of people from Metro Vancouver, she lived in Mount Pleasant beforehand. She said there was one key thing she needed to understand when she moved here.
I really loved slowing down in pace and that kind of like almost gasp of fresh air or that big relaxed sigh when you get to Bowen. It's just like, okay, everything moves slower, you gotta slow down and enjoy your time.
You got to take it slow. You got to take time to cook every day. You got to know that you can't get everywhere you want. But lots of people learn to love that Bowen Island lifestyle, a big reason why it's gone so far in this competition.
Yeah, I've been able to go over for a day trip, and it's definitely a beautiful place. Lots of advantages there. But is it winning its matchup today?
And all of these matchups now. We just have 32 towns left, and they're so tough, these votes. And you can see Bowen Island actually losing right now to another island, Galliano. It's close, but that's a decent advantage for Galliano at the moment. Salt Spring is defeating also Gibson's right now. Those are the two matchups in sort of the Lower Mainland area closer to Metro Van. In the Caribou Thompson, you can see Clearwater defeating Sun Peaks at the moment, Lillooet beating Lytton. Those look to be the four towns that will go on to the Sweet 16 of the search for BC's best small town, but voting still open until 10 o'clock today. These votes are close. It will be interesting to see which matchups ultimately happen.
Justin McElroy on Bowen Island tonight. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Anita.
Johanna Wagstaff is off this week, and meteorologist Nick Czernkovich is here. Nick, so I know we don't know each other too well, but most people know that I've usually got the parka out from September to May, but today I actually felt like it was a little bit too warm for that.
Is that right? Yeah, well, you know what? We've been seeing some pretty mild temperatures over the last couple of days, and it continues. The trend actually still holding on to those double digits. 11 degrees right now, and that's where it's sitting. Well, actually, Cole Harbour's at 12. West Van is at 10. Vancouver Airport, rather, is at 10 as well. Was at 11 the last time I checked. So it's just kind of come down. Actually, a pretty nice day. We've got scattered cloud cover across the region. There's the chance of seeing a few very isolated showers as we move through the next few hours, but these would be isolated in nature. Otherwise, partly cloudy skies right through until tomorrow as well, and then mainly sunny skies into the afternoon. So another great day in the forecast. Here is a look at the forecast for the next 24. Tomorrow morning, 7 degrees, 11 tomorrow. mainly sunny skies. There is some rain on the horizon, but there is also something else. Have you ever seen the Northern Lights, Anita?
I have not. I wish. You?
Well, I'll tell you, I actually have had the pleasure of seeing them, but normally they're up north. You might actually get to see them in Vancouver, and I'll tell you when, coming up in just a bit.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Thanks, Nick.
You bet.
Well, First Nations-led conservation efforts in BC have saved caribou herds from devastation, nearly tripling their population. In 2013, the herds were on the brink of local extinction in the province's northeast, but the Moberly and Saulteaux First Nations began rounding up calving caribou in the spring and protecting the newborns through to autumn. The findings are good news as 21 other herds across BC remain at risk. And we now know more about what caused a massive landslide on a remote area of BC's Central Coast in November of 2020. It's being traced back to a retreating glacier that triggered what scientists are calling a hazard cascade. Now, it started when a shock equivalent to a 4.8 magnitude earthquake hit the West Grenville Glacier. 50 million tons of rock went sliding the slope and into the glacial lake, a clump of mass equivalent to all of Canada's 25 million cars falling at 140 kilometers an hour. Next was a 100-meter tsunami wave that broke the banks of Elliott Lake. Now, that caused huge flooding, carving out channels and tearing out trees, soil, and rock. All of that debris surged down into the valley, into Southgate River, then to Butte Inlet. And nobody even knew all of this happened until people noticed the logs in the inlet. Finally, a helicopter flew over the area and spotted the devastation. Now, earlier today, I spoke with two of the researchers behind the study looking at all of this, Dr. Brian Menounos and Dr. Martin Geertsma, both affiliates of the Hakai Institute. This all caused a chain reaction of devastation. So what are the ramifications from everything that happened?
There's a tremendous amount of sediment that was introduced into Southgate River from Elliott Creek. 4 million cubic meters of sediment left the creek during this outburst flood and went into Southgate River with lots of sands and gravel smothering fish habitat, and some of this also went out into Butte Inlet.
There are other parts of British Columbia that are susceptible to landslides like this and these kinds of hazards. Do we know where those places are? Are we prepared for that?
In some areas we are. We know that glaciers continue to melt under current and projected climate change. So part of the question is exactly where that ice will melt. But in many cases we also have right today steep terrain, which is in some cases we have these lakes right at the foot of the steep terrain. So part of it requires ongoing research into the existing terrain and the susceptibility of that terrain.
So some of the areas that are particularly at risk are areas where glaciers are retreating, and that's happening in many places of the province. That alone doesn't necessarily increase the risk, but when you have a combination of glaciers with pro-glacier lakes in front of them, and as these glaciers retreat, sometimes these lakes grow in towards the steeper terrain, which is sometimes unstable, and that can create the right combination of events for a landslide, tsunami, and outburst flood.
Well, these glaciers are retreating because of climate change. Can you talk about how that's happening, why that's happening?
In many cases, the glaciers are direct indicators of the local climate and the local day-to-day weather. Over time, though, over decades, they are integrating that weather, and they actually are responding to climate and climate change. And this ice and snow directly melts in response to warmer air temperatures. In addition to that, we had a bad wildfire season last year in a number of years, and the introduction of soot from that darkens those surfaces and increases the amount of energy that comes into those surfaces. So in addition to the temperature, we also have this darkening of these surfaces, which can absorb more energy and quickly melt that snow and ice.
A lot of this research was done with local First Nations. How important is that to continue going into the future?
I think it's critically important to work with locals in local communities, and in this case, the Hamalco First Nation. They were part of the research from the start, from the moment we learned about the event. It happened on their territory, and what I found most informative, speaking to the chief, but also to the members of the community, that there's land here that has been used by multiple generations. I didn't know how it was used, and it's really that two-way exchange of information which is so vital. The traditional scientific way as you go into these locations, and then you inform the local people what had happened. And I think we kind of forget that the local people know a lot about what's happened on their land, and it's great to hear those traditional stories.
Absolutely, that history is so important. Thank you both for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Well, the numbers continue to rise ever higher. Now, 4 million Ukrainians have crossed into Eastern Europe. We show you how Hungary is handling the influx next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. A research associate from the University of Calgary is trying out a new way to treat PTSD in veterans and first responders. It's at a ranch in the middle of nowhere near an Alberta military base where they're greeted by horses. Have a look.
With PTSD, you have a lot of ups and downs.
Then we'll do some figure eight just by having Blossom walks beside us.
Going to see a psychologist or social workers, that works great, but I find this is just another tool to help you deal with that stuff you go to the office for.
For a lot of people to talk about wellness in a therapy session is not easy. It's hard for them to just sit down and discuss. For other people, it's easier to be in an outside setting in nature, to be in the barn. We are 20 minutes east of Minnesota on my property where I do equine facilitated wellness. Today with the client, with Jay, we have worked for 90 minutes. Together, we cover a little bit of psychoeducation of the reason why he came.
I've done 3 tours overseas, Cambodia and 2 tours of Bosnia. So for me to be living in the now is what I need to be doing, not the past. With PTSD, it brings you back a lot.
You're good.
We're at the stables here, and Martin set me up to work with the horses, to learn how to keep your breathing, keep yourself calm around the horses, and making a connection with the horse at the same time too.
Sometimes we're just gonna clean the floor. We're just gonna clean the stall. We're gonna have like some super meaningful conversation while grooming a horse. And so that's the only way for some people that they'll be able to talk about it, that you'll be able to release everything that they're holding back in a safe way.
I feel more leveled, I guess, so I don't have the ups and downs going all the time. It's probably because I'm more focusing on something else instead of my PTSD. I don't think I'll ever forget, but it's mainly to live with it and cope with it and work through it.
The faint glimmers of hope that were sparked by talks between Ukraine and Russia appear to have faded. Salima Shivji tells us continued attacks and recent statements from the Kremlin have cast international doubt on Russia's pledge to pull back operations around Kyiv and other northern areas of Ukraine.
It's hard to overstate the skepticism that people on the ground in Ukraine felt when they heard that promise from Russia that it would dramatically reduce its military operations around the capital, Kyiv, and around Chernihiv. Ukrainian defense officials say it's misdirection, a deliberate attempt to obscure that troops are going to be moved elsewhere and redeployed in other parts of the country.
These signals do not silence the explosion of the Russian shells.
And President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukrainians aren't naive enough to ever take Russia at its word. The sense here is that Russia can't be trusted. Dima is a 27-year-old who escaped from Kyiv to the western part of the country just days after the invasion.
I think it's a lie. For me, if you ask me about military goes back, I don't think what this is true information.
The doubts borne out on the ground with heavy artillery hitting the outskirts of Kyiv and Chernihiv to the north. Local officials there say they saw more bombs overnight than usual.
Today, we've had a colossal mortar attack on the center of Chernihiv. 25 people have been wounded and are now in hospital. They're all civilians. So whenever Russia says something, this needs to be checked carefully.
In the south, Mariupol is still under constant bombardment, the devastation acute. Hospitals, apartment buildings, civilian neighborhoods gone. Those who have somehow escaped recount the horrors. There is no Mariupol anymore, the 77-year-old woman says, from a refugee center in nearby Zaporizhzhia. They bombed it completely. There are also accusations from the Ukrainians that Russian troops have targeted a Red Cross facility. The Kremlin now saying the shelling of the port city of Mariupol will only stop once Ukrainians lay down their arms. That comment came in a call between Vladimir Putin and French President Emmanuel Macron. France, along with Turkey, Greece, and several other humanitarian groups, are laying out a plan to try to get some of the tens of thousands of people in Mariupol out safely. Putin told Macron he'd think about it. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Lviv.
More than 4 million refugees have now fled Ukraine, and all of the country's western neighbors are feeling the impact. Briar Stewart has this report from a refugee center in Hungary's capital.
The group behind me just arrived from Ukraine. Now, they were taken by train from the border to the city of Budapest, and they were brought here by bus to a sports center. And the very first thing they have to do when they arrive is be registered. So that's what these people are doing now. And after that, there are a few things they can do at the sports center. We're going to take a walk down here and see the stations that they have set up. Now, everyone who comes here can get a SIM card right away. They can get a meal. They can get help. They have translators on staff here. But really, Hungary for most of these people is just a stop on a very long and exhaustive journey. Over there in the corner, you can see people lined up. What they're lining up for are bus tickets and train tickets on to their next destination. We spoke with some people here who've been traveling for 5 days. One family who went out through Moldova, went through Romania. Now they're in Hungary, they're going to Austria, and their final destination is actually Germany. Now, the vast majority of refugees here are not staying, but Hungary says it's seen 400,000 transit through here already. Hungary is a country in the European Union that has a track record of anti-immigration policies. There's a very long fortified border fence with the border with Serbia. In recent years, it's dismantled the asylum system. And a lot of people have remarked at the difference between how refugees from Afghanistan and Syria have been treated versus the refugees from Ukraine. But of course, it is important to note that the vast majority of people who have come through here will not be staying. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Budapest.
One of the best-known companies in the world is failing to live up to its promise to suspend all operations in Russia. The closure to protest the invasion of Ukraine was welcomed by customers around the world. But now, as Sophia Harris tells us, some of that shine may be coming off those golden arches.
A busy McDonald's in Moscow, one of several spotted open, despite McDonald's promising 3 weeks ago to temporarily close all 850 restaurants in Russia.
KFC, Burger King.
It's one of a number of global fast food chains still operating in Russia, sparking a barrage of complaints on social media. Winnipeg's Andrei Primak has close ties to Ukraine.
My parents are still there.
He wants to see a larger corporate exit from Russia.
Sending a strong message to them is what's needed. And one of the way of sending this message is that the foreign companies, they completely shut down.
Chains like KFC, Subway, and Burger King say hundreds of their Russian restaurants remain open because they're owned by independent franchisees. But those chains say they're cutting corporate support and donating profits. In a statement, Burger King's owner, Toronto-based Restaurant Brands International, says it owns a minority stake in Russia's 800 franchises, and it had demanded the main operator pause operations, but they have refused to do so. So the company is trying to dispose its share of the business.
They've signed a contract.
This lawyer says it can be hard for companies to shut down foreign franchises because they're often managed locally.
Effectively, it would be up to the master franchisee in that territory to decide whether or not to cease operations.
As for McDonald's, staff at this Moscow location say it's franchisee owned. But U.S. head office won't say why some Russian restaurants remain open. This business professor says McDonald's needs to serve up an explanation.
It's going to hurt the brand because people will assume that they have something to hide when they're not coming out and explaining and disclosing what's happening.
Experts say franchises still open in Russia could soon be forced to shut down anyway if economic sanctions disrupt their supplies. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Vancouver.
Canada's former Chief of Defence Staff has pleaded guilty to one count of obstructing justice. Military police charged retired General Jonathan Vance last summer in relation to an investigation into sexual misconduct claims. As Ashley Burke reports, the case is one of the most high-profile sexual misconduct cases in an ongoing crisis that has shaken the Canadian Armed Forces over the past year.
He was Canada's top soldier. Today, retired General Jonathan Vance was sentenced to a conditional discharge and 12 months probation after pleading guilty to obstruction of justice.
For General Vance to be able to walk away from this, these women will hold that their entire lives.
Military police had investigated allegations Vance had an inappropriate relationship with Major Kelly Brennan, who later testified at a parliamentary committee that Vance persuaded her to make false statements to investigators.
Did General Vance ever instruct you to lie about your relationship?
Yes, it's recorded, and the CFNIS has all of the recordings of him directing me what to say, what not to say, how to say it, what to exclude.
In court, Vance's lawyer read a series of letters from retired military members, revering Vance for his time in combat in Afghanistan, the number of hours he spent outside the wire. The judge said it was one factor he took into consideration and said, quote, "I don't feel that it's necessary to burden you with a criminal conviction because I feel that will allow you to now go on and make further contributions to society."
It's really disappointing. I think it's a failing of the civilian justice system. This is someone who pled guilty to a criminal charge and ultimately is not going to face criminal charges because the judge sees that he seems like a good guy.
The defense minister wouldn't comment on the case, but said she's committed to changing the military's culture.
My role as Minister of National Defence is to build a Canadian Armed Forces and an institution where everyone can work in a safe and respectful environment where they are not suffering sexual harassment.
The judge said today that Vance is not allowed to have any contact with Brennan except through their lawyers for any family law proceedings or to pay child support. Vance and Brennan have one child together. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
It's been nearly a year since the discovery of unmarked graves at a former residential school in Kamloops. We return to the Kamloops Tishkwetmik Nation and speak about next steps and healing coming up.
Eight o'clock this morning, outside the Pacific Coliseum. Hockey fans await the sale of Vancouver Canuck playoff tickets. Most have spent the night.
The first guy in line, when did you get here?
Saturday afternoon at 3.
What have you been doing for, what, a day and a half?
Oh, partying, throwing a football around, sleeping, freezing.
How much cash have you got there?
I have got about $1,500.
So how many tickets are you planning on buying?
I plan on buying 4 tickets for each game, which is 32 tickets, and my wife is going to do the same.
With what's happened inside the Coliseum this year, it's easy to understand the rush for tickets. But with the threat of a player strike still looming, there might be no playoff games.
Whose side are you on in the strike?
I guess you have to go with the players, you know. They're doing a fairly good job, and, you know, I think they deserve the money, so I have to go with the players.
You're shaking your head back here. Whose side are you on?
I don't agree with the players at all. I think they're asking for too much money. I think they're getting enough money as it is, you know. You can go work for the city, dig some ditches, get $40,000 a year. See how you feel about that when you're making $300,000 a year.
How many tickets?
32.
And that, what'd you shell out for that?
That just cost me $1,112.
What can you tell these fans who are wondering if there's a strike? What's going on? They're going to buy tickets today. What happens if there is a strike?
If there's a strike and there are no games played, then you'll be refunded your money. There's been no comment made on any different kind of players playing as of yet.
There's been some 2:30 this afternoon, back inside the Coliseum. Vancouver Canucks Vice Chairman Arthur Griffiths addresses the media, outlining the owner's position.
What's offered is a 1-year contract for the players. And it effectively is 2 years, but we're finishing up the first year, I hope. And we have 1 more year to go.
The players want to use the strike as a last resort. They don't, they want to continue playing. We want the playoffs. And I think they just want to make sure before anything happens that they've got all their facts right. And the next 2 days, as we've heard in the last few days, but the next 2 days are extremely critical. The player reps are going to meet with all the players in the next 24, 48 hours, and we'll see what happens then.
An Indigenous delegation is set to meet with the Pope this week to speak about the legacy of residential schools and the pivotal role the church played in them. The visit follows a year of reckoning with the discovery of unmarked graves near schools across the country. The first major finding happened in Kamloops. Renee Filipponi has a look at how that community is coping and what's next.
Put your hands up here. Go.
At her home on the Kamloops to Secwepemc Nation, Ashley Michelle sews a traditional ribbon skirt with her daughter. For her, every stitch is mending scars from the legacy of residential school.
For me, reconnecting back to culture and language was something that I've always wanted to do. I just didn't know how to do it.
Her grandmother is a survivor of the Kamloops Indian Residential School, a place of abuse, death, and assimilation, the effects of which weigh heavy on younger generations.
I can't speak my language. I had to relearn my culture because of what our ancestors, our elders, our survivors went through. Okay, so we're gonna put the glue up and you're gonna glue all the way down here.
Michelle turned her journey to regain Indigenous knowledge into a business and has become a strong voice for intergenerational trauma.
Our kids do not need to feel this pain, and it stops with my generation.
She spoke directly to the Prime Minister during his visit in October, a trip he made months after the discovery last spring of more than 200 possible unmarked burial sites.
You have to pass on this knowledge to the next generation. It's just, and I'm really glad that the world knows.
Dina Jules is a survivor and growing up heard stories of children being buried in the orchard. She helped organize the ground-penetrating radar, which made findings that have been difficult to come to terms with.
I think with the whole grieving process, you know, you get angry, you get really sad, you get really angry, so it just keeps going round and round.
So in here, we have this is the 4th floor of the Kamloops Indian Residential School.
Inside the boys' dormitory of the residential school, Kamloops Chief Roseanne Casimir reflects on how the past 10 months have been.
There has been so much different and various and re-traumatized and re-triggered painful memories, especially from the community.
She is part of the delegation to the Vatican and will personally invite the Pope to Kamloops when he visits Canada.
To me, a meaningful apology will only take place after he has the opportunity to hear the truths from our survivors of the residential school and from the intergenerational survivors, and knowing the pain that it has caused.
You got this, go.
It's a cycle of pain Ashley wants to end with her generation. The pair pay a visit to her grandmother, Charlotte, who lives a short walk away. The elder is proud of what Ashley has done to reconnect with her Indigenous roots, something she sees as integral for everyone who has been harmed.
My mom always told me, the truth will hurt, but the truth will heal, and it will set you free. And I firmly believe that. Our Native people really need to work with each other and believe in each other. And then we'll start to heal.
A journey this family is already on. Love and support driving the path for the future. Renee Filipponi, CBC News on the Kamloops to Secwepemc Nation.
To Rome now, where the Assembly of First Nations is preparing to meet with the Pope tomorrow. And on Friday, the entire delegation attends a final audience at the Vatican. For that, they've prepared cultural presentations selected just for this moment to convey a powerful message to the Catholic Church. Juanita Taylor now with some of what Pope Francis can expect to see and learn more about.
People commuting past this grand hall in downtown Rome were treated to this on a gray, rainy day. They're not just any fiddlers, they're Métis from Alberta, warming up for a performance for Pope Francis.
This is what I'm made to do, is to play music for people, so that's what I'm gonna do.
Brianna Lizotte and Alex Kusterwalk have been invited by the Métis National Council to be a part of this visit in Rome, where a delegation of Indigenous elders, survivors, and youth have been sharing their stories of how residential school has impacted them and their people. These young fiddlers hope their music helps support their elders.
Especially through music, I find that it helps uplift everyone's spirits, especially when talking about something so traumatizing and something that is in our families still of intergenerational trauma. So it's just really important that I'm here and playing the fiddle.
I believe that, there needs to be a certain level of closure from these elders, and I just hope that there can be a start, in moving forward in this.
David Sekwak made this drum for the occasion. White in color to symbolize peace, a message for the Pope. He says Inuit Teparit Kanitami invited him to be a part of the cultural presentations at the final audience.
ihumagayug ni chamia yuka takwa ta tuga to himayud ihumagayug ni aslupkit mumerni na ihumagilaslup ko kanu mumityak taginya mga kanu oanya mga.
Czernkovich says he's proud to be a part of this historic moment.
Yani ko biya huktunga Inuit ilikohia mikiyut ang walwag mik takuta kataw ni akapku te matuik karwa alangmut amaluk kitumianut.
One of the things that we've been hearing over the years as part of the residential school story, as it's been told, is the pain that the people feel that their culture had been suppressed through that system. Let's use this as an opportunity to show that as we want to heal relationships, as we want to move forward on reconciliation, culture needs to be acknowledged and respected, shared and celebrated.
Brianna Lizotte is already seeing an impact.
Within the last 5 days of me being here and starting this conversation, a lot of my family members have come forward and actually told me that they are survivors. So I feel like what we're here doing is it's working, and these hidden stories that have been hidden for so long are finally coming out, and people are finally speaking their truths about being a survivor.
Alex Custerrock hopes their performances will have a lasting impact on the Pope.
You know, just being able to contribute music and to just represent to him that we are lively people, that we are full of life. And the music, you know, whether you're the Pope or not, it has the power to move you. And I hope that he can remember how the music makes him feel and associate that with the Métis and the First Nations and the Inuit people.
Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Rome.
More and more provincial governments are trying to take on the rising costs of owning a home. As prices soar, we look at the move to tax foreign purchases and more. That's next. And at 6:45, a live look tonight at Prince George, where they saw sunny skies today and plenty of sun here on the south coast, too. There's good reason to gaze north this evening. Nick will tell you why next. Meteorologist Nick Czernkovich joins us now. And Nick, you were hinting at a chance to see the northern lights. Tell me everything.
Yeah, that's right, Anita. And in fact, it's going to come sooner than you might have thought. We're talking about tonight. Now, when scientists measure sort of the strength of these geomagnetic storms, it ranges on a scale of 1 to 9. It's the KP index. And tonight, they're expecting it to be a 6. So that's pretty high in terms of the strength of these geomagnetic storms. And in fact, just about everybody in Canada, and that includes all of British Columbia, the possibility here of seeing the northern lights, not just on the horizon, but overhead. So now the big question is, are you going to have clear skies? Well, the answer is yes and no. We've got partly cloudy skies in the forecast here. We've got a few lingering showers around the area, but yeah, we are going to see some clear breaks. So if you can get to a spot that's fairly dark where you don't have a lot of light pollution, you might actually be able to see the northern lights tonight. So that's kind of fun. Back down to earth, we're still looking at a few showers, again, just sort of passing across Vancouver Island. We've got a little bit of it in the area of Metro Vancouver, but not much to speak of. As we move through tonight, especially through the later parts of the night, we're looking at just partly cloudy skies, so we'll definitely see some breaks in there. Tomorrow morning, partly cloudy skies, switches to a mix of sun and cloud, and then basically mainly sunny skies through tomorrow afternoon. That's before the next system comes on shore. This one for Friday. Now, Friday morning, we're looking at rain showers just along the coast of Vancouver Island, but by the time we get to about the noon hour, we're looking at rain showers moving through Metro Vancouver as well, and then they push eastward through the BC interior, and it slowly begins to fizzle out. Saturday, things clear up. Not a lot of rain with this one. Again, about 5 to 10 millimeters expected, and not a lot in terms of winds either. Generally up to about 20 kilometers per hour, though through the morning, winds around 30 kilometers per hour just along the shoreline there, but otherwise fairly light winds in the forecast. Overall, a little cooler than what we've seen over the last couple of days for BC there, but temperatures at or just below the seasonal mark, but still looking at double digits for most. Certainly for Metro Vancouver, 11 degrees there and mainly sunny by the afternoon. Rain showers moving in for Friday. They clear out for Saturday. And then Sunday, it looks like sort of midday rain showers, and then they clear out by midday on Monday, so a little bit of wet weather there. But tonight, if you have the chance, get to a dark place, and you might actually be able to see the northern lights. They're pretty cool, especially with this index being so high. You could actually see them dancing in the sky.
Oh, that's awesome. I definitely hope I catch it.
I hope so.
Thanks, Nick.
You bet.
The soaring cost of buying a home is on the minds of many Canadians. In Ontario, the province's government unveiled what it says is a plan to tackle the housing shortage. Critics say it won't make homes more affordable. Katie Nicholson now on the move and the pushback.
This is a great example of the type of housing that used to predominate.
Dave Scrivener believes in affordable housing.
This is the kind of neighborhood that we need to make sure that there's increased density and more available housing in.
Okay, how do you do that?
How do you do that? I think one of the major things that we need to do is make it easier to build that kind of housing. Right now, there's a lot of exclusionary zoning that limits the types of houses that can be built.
Ontario's Housing Affordability Task Force proposed building 1.5 million new homes over the next 10 years to make ownership more possible. It also pushed to increase density in existing neighborhoods. That wasn't in today's announcement because the province says that decision needs buy-in from municipalities.
Because municipalities aren't there.
Ontario is also pledging to speed up some project approvals to get shovels in the ground faster. And it's upping a tax for foreign buyers to 20% and applying it province-wide.
The reality is that non-resident investors continue to be very small.
Not only that, this professor says the plan doesn't do enough to meet people where they're at.
Because the strategy is so development friendly, is so developer friendly.
But following the announcement, the Premier chose to meet for a chat with the Ontario Real Estate Association.
We're going to cut the red tape and all the regulations.
That's pretty disappointing that that's their priority audience that they're going to go to right after their housing affordability announcement are the people who make money off more expensive houses.
A much more useful audience, he says, talking to people who are priced out of neighborhoods like this one. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
So much snow. A Labrador resident is faced with a question: what to do with it all? His answer next.
We go down. This is basically like an introduction to stage combat for young folks, mostly for folks in high school, and it's a way to just kind of learn what the basics are. It's just a way to explore what stage combat is in a really gentle way, learning like brief hand-to-hand, learning how to fall. That's kind of what I specialize in, is falling and rolling and tumbling. So really kind of the broader, it's like a broad strokes of what stage combat is in general and how to put those little pieces together. I'm gonna place my sword here, and you're gonna catch it. If you had a fight choreographer or a fight director come into your school or come into a play that you're a part of, you'll know what to expect at that point. And you'll have more tools in your toolkit to be able to explore further. So I think that's one of the benefits of this, and it's also like a little spark. As we're coming down and flicking, we get a little sound. When I had my first stage combat class, I think it was at a one-acts festival in high school, and I loved it. And it was very much just like learning these little bits of things, and that kind of sparked that joy in me for when I got to do more training as I got older and got more invested in the arts. It was, I still remember that one stage combat class that I got to like fall on the floor and smash my head into a table. And then I was like, oh, this is so cool, but I was totally fine. So it's those moments of being able to like explore extremes and be able to like find joy in them, I think is what people can take away from it.
This is my second year helping out Bill Soper for helping the new Canadians to experience our trails. It's fun, we enjoy it, and it's a great way to them introduce to other people that's in our community and let them know that, you know, this community is about meeting people and helping people.
I was a bit nervous and excited at the same time because it's my first time.
Kind of excited to see what's going on.
Hey guys, we're heading out.
Hi, my name is Hafiza, and I have been a volunteer with the ANC for the past 2.5 years. We're doing this for the second time, and we're really excited. We're looking forward to the walk and then to the little entertainment that we have inside. I think there's a lot to take away. It's like the bonding, the friendship, you know, the fun that we have. It's everything. So they come single and then they go back with lots of friendship. So it's good. We have a larger number than last year, so I know we're going to have more in the coming years.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. On April 7th, join CBC Vancouver's Anita Bathe and a panel of entrepreneurs at a free online UBC Dialogues discussion about how to cultivate an entrepreneurial mindset and succeed in business. And get Metro Vancouver news that matters to you wherever you are with the free CBC News app. Download it today and stay connected to where you live.
While we may be well into spring here in the Lower Mainland, in other parts of Canada, not so much. Just take a look at this. More than 400 centimeters of snow has already fallen in Red Bay, Labrador this winter. Some residents, like Ross Pike, say it's getting scary and stressful. You can see why. Just look at the pictures he shared with us. This is Ross's home, completely smothered in snow. It's up past the windows, right up to his roof. Yeah, I'm happy we're done with that, that's for sure. There is no digging out of that. I feel for you, Ross. Well, that is it for our show tonight. CBC Vancouver thanks you for watching us. Good night.